Welcome to another episode of the Operating System Show. I'm your host, Matt Dixon, and I build business operating systems for mid-market companies. And this show is for people who are done being the bottleneck or done having a bottleneck in their business. We discuss operations and how we can streamline things and improve things and help people get in their superpowers and get away from the mundane tasks. Today, my guest is Timothy Bramlett. And he started as a software engineer and was a serial founder for several companies. He worked for some big names like HP and Capital One, and then he walked away from his corporate job to start a couple businesses. Right now he's building Zinng. It's an AI phone agent or a receptionist, and it can answer calls 24/7 so that small business owners don't have to. Tim, glad to have you on the show. Thanks for joining me.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me on the show. I watched some of the podcast episodes and was very impressed. I also like how technical you are. I don't get a lot of technical conversations with people that are not my team these days. So it's always good to get in to talk to someone who's a little bit more technical and can get into the weeds, so to speak.
Love it. We can get to the weeds. We can stay on top. We can do whatever, wherever it goes, right?
Sounds good.
So tell me what started your foray into entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so it was always something I was craving because I never liked the corporate world, and I was not a good corporate employee. I was not a good employee in general because I always wanted wanted to do things the way I thought stupidly they should be done, and I was very naive when I was younger. But I didn't know how to get started. And I don't know what it was 10 years ago. Someone gave me the best advice, and I wish I remembered specifically what this conversation was or how it happened, but I don't, just a vague concept in my head. But someone told me, if you want to start building things, just start. Just start doing it. And I think it was a guy that actually eventually started a Reddit group about that concept that was related to SEO, I think. But anyway, I got that advice about 10 years ago. And that's when I first started exploring things online. And I didn't start off with software. I actually started off with doing SEO projects because I wanted to learn the basics of marketing. I had no success with SEO until 2020 and a freak thing with the pandemic. But that is how I got started. I always had that drive, that desire. I didn't know how to do it though until someone made me realize that no one knows how to do it. You just jump in and you start figuring things out. And so that's why I started doing.
Excellent. So tell us about your first company. What did that do?
That wasn't even a company, to be honest. My first foray into trying to do anything was really creating content. I think it was a review site that I was doing, the old Amazon affiliate approach. And so I was creating content, reviewing, I think, technology products and stuff like that. And that completely failed. I mean, that completely went nowhere. I didn't give it enough time. And obviously there's a lot of competition in that space. But that was the first thing I attempted.
Okay, excellent. And you say you built first. I'm in the Dan Martell coaching group, and he always says pre-sell everything, right? Get people on a waiting list and help them fund your initial release. Tell me a little bit about how your build first has worked for you.
Build first? No, that is absolutely not my philosophy. In fact, the AI company that I did before this, Stammer, we actually pre-sold access to it before we built it. Now, the truth is we were kind of building the prototype in the background, myself, and at that time, my senior engineer, who's now the head of the development shop that we have a relationship with. But no, I did do build first with one product, my first product that I launched, which was Notifier. It was a social, it still exists, actually. I still keep it around and it works. But I still maintain it. But with Notifier, I built the product first. And it was actually a product that I myself was using to try to market my affiliate products or my affiliate sites. And what I was doing is monitoring Reddit for certain keywords, very simple approach that everyone does these days. There's a ton of products that do this, although with them shutting down the API, that soon will stop. But I was just monitoring Reddit, which had a very good public API for keywords. And then I was jumping in and trying to organically recommend. It was actually home gem stuff, I think, back then, or no, before that, I don't remember what it was. But it was something I was trying to recommend. And it actually worked for that. It worked quite a bit. Some people would downvote the things and everything, and you had to be careful about posting links until people asked for it. But it did help to initially bootstrap traffic to some of these affiliate sites. And when I was ready to start exploring software, I needed some software to launch. And the only idea I could think of was taking this old CLI app that I had and wrapping a web application around it. And it was possibly I like to say it was the worst web application the world has ever seen,
Love
because
it.
I had no experience in web development. I was big data and distributed systems and stuff like that, financial data. And so I had no experience with this. But I did manage to get it out, the bare bones web application. And eventually we replaced all that code because it was horribly done. But that was just build and see what happens. And I launched it on Product Hunt. Luckily, that worked out, but that is absolutely not the way you should do it. You should absolutely go build a channel, go build an audience, go build a way to acquire customers first, find out what they need, and then build the product.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So I had it a little bit wrong, and that's okay. But tell me a little bit about the difference between the build it first versus the get people on a wait list. Tell me the benefits of doing it the way you do it now.
Yeah, I mean, the benefits are just, it's ridiculous. I mean, we as developers, we think we're smart people, and we think that we know, oh, I know how people, what their pain points are and stuff like that. But it couldn't be any further from the truth. And going the other way, because not honestly, building a product and launching a website, none of that matters if you cannot get traffic to the website. And in order to do that, you have to build something that people actually will pay for, something they care about. And so the benefits of the approach of getting the audience first, getting the people there first, it's just that you get it validated, right? Hey, people are interested in this, they use it. And that's really the only way I build products now. That's exactly what we did with Zinng. I was literally there in the dental office day after day, working with them. We actually started by cloning the functionality of an existing product that they were using and paying $500 or $600 a month for, that they were having issues with, and it didn't have all the functionality they needed. So we started there, and that is a valid approach as well in many cases, is if for whatever reason, if you can't find people to talk to, which I really recommend going and talking in person, or at the very least get them on a call like this and talk to them. But if for whatever reason you cannot do that, go and clone the functionality of an existing enterprise product, niche down to a new customer segment, and start there. And then, I mean, you're going to have the same problem. You're going to have to get traffic to it, and you're going to have to talk to your customers. But at least if you start with that approach, you're much less likely to build something that no one cares about.
Yeah, that's true. I've often thought about rewriting a bunch of the SaaS products that I pay for and don't like, right? We all, not the good ones, but the irritating ones.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good approach, to be honest. And I do see people doing that. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with Ahrefs, but it's an SEO tool that actually was bootstrapped, just like we are. And they're doing God knows how much now, probably 500 million, maybe less. I haven't been following them. But there's a lot of competitors that now for them, and these are bootstrappers themselves getting started, and they're just cloning the key functionality of Ahrefs. And instead of building all that code themselves, what they're doing is going and using, what is it called? Data for SEO, I believe is the name of the product. And so they're just wrapping data for SEO, which is just an API for SEO, which is also a great approach. Leverage as many pre-built existing platforms as you can, wrap it, start building up your customer base. And then when you have enough customers, then you can go and consider replacing that functionality so you can lower costs.
Yeah, that's interesting. That is a good approach. Don't reinvent the wheel. And I think engineer brains, right? We are intelligent, but we're highly intelligent and highly ignorant in a lot of areas. But we don't know where our ignorant areas are until we talk to other people outside of engineering.
Absolutely. We are, yeah. And it's funny, but I can remember when I first got started in engineering, and I feel like many engineers go through this, and we're dealing with it now with our intern. But they want to do everything themselves. And I was the exact same way. And And I think, interestingly, a lot of that wanting to do it yourself comes from the fact that learning a library is not fun. It's difficult. It's not, you don't want to, it's easier now, I think, because we have AI that can kind of look over documentation for us and stuff and just tell you in many cases, here's the methods, here's the stuff. But 10 years ago, 5 years ago, even, it wasn't that easy. And it was almost easier for you to get started by simply replicating the functionality yourself. But it's absolutely not the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were talking earlier before the recording about my business operating system and your product Zinng. So yours is narrow and deep, right? Mine's wide and shallow, if you were to put it in those terms. Tell me the difference between, there are benefits to each, but why did you go narrow and deep into just phones?
Well, yeah, that is a great question, actually. And I never heard it phrased like that with narrow and deep, but that makes complete sense. But I think the reason is when you're bootstrapping, your budget is so limited, right? And I hate complexity. Complexity is what in my opinion, my personal opinion, complexity is what kills products. I've seen so many products get started. I've done it myself where you try to do everything, from the get-go. You handle internationalization, you target every person in every country. And for a small team, that's just not sustainable. You have to niche down, you have to focus, at least from a product perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I wanted to do. We just wanted to target an AI receptionist. But we also build all the other pieces. We have an iOS app, an Android app, two-way texting. We're breaking into some other things. We have a chat widget at this point. People kept asking for it, so we had to build it. What else? Website form widgets. We're not going to build a website builder. That we are absolutely not going to do unless we can just wrap Vercel V0 or something. I don't know if they have that capability. But most customers, I just tell them go and use Vercel V0 or something more easier like GoDaddy's Arrow product. But that is it, because I believe that if you can focus, get it working, get one thing working properly, that at least people will pay for just that thing, you can find customers who are willing to pay just for that thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then what does the product do aside from just answering the phone?
It answers the phone. It gives you so we have an inbox where you can communicate with your customers through the chat widget, through SMS. So really what it's all about is you get a phone call, and then the moment you get that phone call, you can see the transcript of that phone call. The agent handles it. And in most cases, the agent, is able to handle most 85% of the calls, because most calls to a small and medium-sized business are really pretty simple. But then the moment you do need a human to get in the loop, it can transfer the call to a human, to another number. It can text the person. So we use that for appointment scheduling, texting them a link to your scheduling system. It can also, of course, schedule calls live on the call, or schedule appointments live on the call. I actually don't love that approach. For our dental offices, we actually use the link-based approach, because in my experience, and people don't always believe me, but scheduling an appointment over the phone is actually, in my opinion, a worse experience than just doing it through a link, because it's a visual interface, right? You can see all the times available. You can switch days easily. Whereas if you're doing it on the phone, the agent can provide a range of times, or it can provide exact times, but it's just a little bit clunky.
Yeah. So putting myself in the business owner's shoes, the dental office that you started with, what kind of, thinking as a CEO, how does this help that company? How does it unlock revenue? How does it benefit, and what impact does it have on these businesses?
Can you say that piece again?
Yeah. So thinking as the business owner, like a dental office owner, what revenue does it unlock? What benefit does it bring? Why do you wake up every day to build this? Because it's got to have some benefit to your customers. Otherwise, they wouldn't buy from you. So just trying to think of, what is that ROI that we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly. For a lot of these guys, it's honestly the fact that they do not have time to answer the call in their day-to-day operations. For instance, we have one guy who's a chiropractor. He sent me a text message just yesterday actually, and said, in fact, I posted it on Instagram without his name and stuff. I had it blurred out, but it literally said, ever since I got Zinng, it's able to handle so many spam and scam callers for me. And thank you so much. It was something like that. I could probably look at the text message. But it's also that, right? It's simply the fact that they do not have time to sit around and answer the call all the time. And a lot of our people are actually solo operators. So it's not like they have a receptionist standing by.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the chiropractor actually does have a receptionist, but even she is often doing other stuff in the practice. They got to handle billing, insurance billing. And so if you can put something in the front that can handle the majority of the calls and get people the simple information they need, what insurances do you take? How do I schedule an appointment? What hours are you open? What's your address? Stuff like that. It really reduces a lot of load. Now, interestingly, the way that we handle it in one of our offices, we still have the human in front the majority of the time, 8 to 5. Because we're all about speed to lead, right? And with dental offices, you get if they don't get a phone call right away, that person is going to go somewhere else. That is for sure, regardless of whatever business it is. No one leaves voicemails. And so with that practice, we're highly focused on getting the human on the phone. But there's also times where she's also presenting treatment plans to the patients, working with financials and stuff. And so after 4 rings, if the office doesn't pick up, the AI agent takes over. And then, of course, at night, the AI agent takes over. It also works as like a answering service. So if there's an emergency, it determines that there's an emergency simply by asking the caller, do you consider this an emergency? And then we detect that and send an emergency SMS alert to the doctor.
Yeah, interesting. So tell me a little shift. Let's talk about AI a bit. So I'm assuming your team is using AI to write the product. Do you have AI built in the product? How are you guys using AI as well in your business?
All over the place. Yeah. And actually, it's interesting that you talk about building business operating systems, because I have inadvertently done that myself by building a lot of internal tooling that connects directly to the system and has access to all the data and everything. And it's incredible what you can just take Claude Code. And a lot of it's because I'm an experienced engineer. But even then, I feel like a layman could get pretty far. Now, there's the security issues, right? I know exactly what I'm doing. We're very careful. We use Tailscale all over the place. It's actually impossible to access our production system unless you're on our private network. But it's incredible, all the things I built. So that's one interesting aspect that's really accelerated us. We built a ton of MCP. I built a ton of MCP tools that have cordoned off access to production data. But that part's incredible. Now we do use AI to write the product, but my developers are very untrustworthy of AI. They use it quite a bit, and they actually prefer Cursor, which is interesting to me. I prefer Claude Code on the CLI, but they seem to love Cursor, and I let them use whatever tools they like to use. But we do not vibe code. It's more of a human driving the writing of the AI and defining the architecture. But we use AI all over the place, but we don't trust it, so to speak.
Yeah, trust but verify maybe is a good way to put it.
Yeah, like an accountant. Yeah.
Like, because you have to have some level of trust, otherwise you would be hand coding things. But I don't ever want to type another if statement in my life. I'm done doing that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. They are not writing code by hand in most cases. I would be very surprised if they've done that in the past year. But yeah, absolutely. And you're absolutely right. There are things you can put in place to test these. Although we haven't gotten to the point that some people have gotten to, where they say that they're using Playwright. Claude Code is driving Playwright in order to test the web application. We found it easier, to be honest, at this point, to just do it as a human. And it's interesting because AI has actually changed where the bottleneck is, in my opinion. It's not necessarily getting code out. It's more testing, getting reliable code out, edge cases that you would never have thought of that you didn't catch with AI, things like that. And we have built some interesting things, though. Like the moment a Sentry issue comes in, our AI does analyze it. And, we have a webhook set up, so it does analyze it. give us a report of, it looks over the code base, it gives us a report of what it thinks it is. And I would say 80% of the time, maybe more, it's absolutely correct.
Yeah. How are your customers using AI? Have you talked to them about that at all?
Oh my God, it's all over the board, to be honest. We have some customers that are just getting started with AI. They know nothing. And they don't even want to touch the phone agent. So we set up everything for them. And we actually use AI to do that. We use Claude Code on the CLI. I do. And then we have a chat with AI functionality that is in beta right now that allows the customers to directly use Opus 4.8, I believe, under the hood, which it has a good base system prompt that knows a lot about our system, but it allows them to make changes to the prompt because it's so much better, to be honest. This is the open, like AI is so much better at writing a prompt than I am that it's not even funny. I can literally just, I transcribe everything, right, with a super whisper. And I can give it so much rambling stuff and it just manages to turn that into clean code, so to speak. It's ultimately an English prompt, but in my eyes, it's really code. It's logic written in English. It does such a good job at that. So that's some of the ways that we're using AI, and it's there's so much anti-AI sentiment out there right now that it's actually kind of scary because a lot of people are really going to be left behind because they've tried maybe GPT 3.5 or something. They tried the free version and were not impressed, or they asked it to do math or something, or they saw a YouTube video or an Instagram video where, the funny one with the guy who's making ChatGPT do funny things, and he's revealing some of the limitations of the technology. But if you know what you're doing, it's incredible what you can do with it.
Yeah, I look at it's just a tool. It amplifies everything, right? So a hammer, I could pound some nails, or if I'm not good with it, I could hit my thumb. So it just depends on how you use the tool, and if as you learn to use that tool, it becomes better for you. Uh,
That is true.
and who do you think should be handling a whole job, handing a whole job to AI right now, and who should just is not ready for it yet?
Handing a whole job.
Like a task, not like an employee's job, but you know, a job, a piece of work for it to do.
Well, so I think my opinion is a bit conservative. But you would have more experience with this than me, to be clear, because you're in this realm. But in my opinion, I mean, obviously it can handle the front line of the phones. We've seen that. It does a great job with that. It doesn't have world content. And if it had enough context, if it knew everything that one of your employees knew, I think it could probably handle 95% of the calls, unless you get a person that doesn't like AI or just prefers to speak to a human. But where it messes up, in my opinion, is where you don't give it enough context. And that's why I love transcription. But where can you give it a full task? I mean, I don't think AI can, if you mean replacing a full job, I don't think AI at this stage can really replace any full jobs. Maybe something simple like data entry, obviously, it could totally replace that. Frontline customer service, I think in the future it's going to be able to do that. And we'll see a lot more call centers where it's being handled by AI, the front line. But I don't have a lot of experience of like automating complex processes with AI in production for enterprise level companies or even mid market because I don't work in that space. So I would be curious to hear, what you think. Are you seeing compounding errors that occur and you have to manage that and keep things simple? And I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, I don't see it replacing full employees, but I do see it replacing aspects of every employee's job, right? So,
Right. Yes.
for instance, email is a great way to look at it. So I have an email agent and put stuff in different tags and stuff like that. So I deal with like 10 emails a day in my inbox. I have a bunch of other folders that I need to look at every once in a while, but still I could even have AI triage that and get rid of it or whatever. So that aspect of my job is pretty easy. But then writing software, I don't think it could do all the prompting itself and get that done, right? You can't do that because it doesn't know what it doesn't know. And so I think that's an interesting line, though, to see where that line is.
Yes, and I often say that if I think the models are intelligent enough to replace some full engineering tasks if if tokens did not have a cost and if there was no context limit. If those, which is a huge if, right? But if that was the case, I feel like the models are absolutely intelligent. You could just keep dumping data into it, and the context sizes are big enough now to where I think it's Opus 4.8 is my daily driver, and so I'm able to keep this conversation going long enough to where it gets enough data about whatever task it is that I'm doing that it's incredible what it can do.
Yeah, I have a bunch of different tabs open in my command prompt, my terminal.
How how are you managing? Because you use Claude Code, right? How are you? Because the one problem I'm having right now is just managing all these different Claude Code sessions, and then I don't have a good way right now for agents to communicate with each other, except maybe via files. I've thought about building a small system for them to be able to send messages to each other. I know there are some tools that you can use to do this, but I just didn't want to explore them because that would take a few hours to explore them. Are you having agents communicate with each other at this point?
A little bit. So I'm not deep into the orchestration, but I have my main agent that runs my business. And then I have an agent that my main agent can talk to for each project. So a lot
Right.
of times it's like, hey, is this agent stuck? And because I sometimes will run it through Telegram on my computer or my phone. So it's like, yeah,
I've
it's
tried
stuck.
that.
So, okay, you'll restart it and let's get going. But I don't have a lot of cross communication between these specific agents, but
Yeah.
they will automatically create sub agents for you anyway. It's just,
Yeah, I just
coordinating
don't
that.
trust them.
Yeah, and coordinating that work too. Then you're in the token spend that's tripled. If you have three agents and a main agent, so that's four agents. But then
Yep.
it's more than four. It's like eight times because they all have to communicate as well, and they have to send context back and forth. So I find it just simple to just do one agent and have it going, and then I'll work on another thing while it's working. That's kind of how I
Yeah,
work.
absolutely. And I've kind of adopted a similar approach, to be honest. Although the problem I have is that it's the response times. So as the context window starts to fill up, the response times increase. In my experience, I mean, it makes only sense that that would be the case. But often it gets to where I'm waiting 30 seconds or longer for a response, and that's almost like compiling a program type thing. Obviously, compilation would take longer back in the day for a large program, but still, it's like it's you're waiting and you're not able to get things done. So I've started spinning up and cloning the Claude agents. So that I'm, what is it called? What is that command? I don't think it's clone. It's anyway, it's fork. So
Mm,
I started now forking, and I'm running three agents at once that are very similar agents with all access to all the same tools. But then you start to get into other problems. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Obviously, driving agents is going to continue to be the future, but the response times are a problem. If it was more instant, which that's always the case, but if it was more instant and quicker, I could honestly get so much more done. I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but
no, I think you're right. That's I spent a bit of time waiting too.
yeah.
So who in your world also builds with AI and is doing lots of good business stuff that you think our audience would be interested in hearing from?
Well, you mean like in my immediate kind of friend circle?
No, just any other guests that could be on the show that you think would be valuable.
I don't know right now, actually. That is a question I have not thought about. That's one question. I know a friend of mine named Matt, he's been investigating a lot of stuff with local LLMs. He
Don't
is
You can't trust
actually
anyone named Matt.
oh, really? Do you have experience with a Matt? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's my name.
I know, no, I know. But yeah, he's obsessed with local LLMs, which I do feel
Okay.
like I do feel like that could be the future, but I'm not convinced. I've experimented with local LLMs running in RunPod early on because I wanted to see how well they worked. And I was just not super impressed. And I don't see how such a small, I've heard conflicting information though. There's this subreddit called Local LLM that they're claiming that with small local LLMs, they can actually perform better on coding tasks or just as good as something like a frontier model. I haven't had time to go investigate that. I just need it to work, the AI.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. And if something happens with the major AI companies, I don't know how likely that is, to be honest, because I feel like they'll do whatever it takes, especially the government, in order to keep those companies going and inject cash into them. But if something ever does happen and those companies go under, or the product is not progressing, local LLMs are kind of a backup. It's at least what people think. Also for data protection and stuff, because there's been
Hmm.
some evidence that the companies may be looking at everything you're sending, even though they're claiming they're not.
If it goes across the wire, I can't trust it, right?
Yep, yeah. But the problem is, to run a frontier model, you'd have to spend, or a near frontier model, you'd have to spend what, 150K or something to even get
Yeah, it's a little
to
bit
be
out
able
of
to
my
inference.
budget for that.
It's crazy because, Matt, you know for sure that there is some guy who's got some money who has literally spent that much and is running. What is the latest open source model? Actually, I don't think there's any recently that you can actually, that have the weights out, that you can literally run on your own hardware. But he's the two big ones that came out. But there's someone running the latest open source model in
There's got
house.
to be.
Yeah,
He's got like a whole server farm in his
yeah.
garage.
His whole house is heating up. Exactly.
Yep, yep. So what's next for Zinng? Where do you see this going? Where do you see AI going? And what's your projection here?
Yeah, so we're going to keep doing what we're doing now. We're going to keep improving the core product. We just launched our iOS and Android apps. Right now, we have to invite people to them because they're still in that testing phase. But we're going to get those out. We're going to continue refining things. We're going to continue to keep an eye on the phone agent technologies, because that area is also increasing rapidly. I expect in the next few years, the voices are only going to be more realistic. We have a technology now from our voice provider that allows them to show more emotion and stuff like that. So they're getting more human, but there is still a long way to go. And at the same time, you have to balance that out with the business side, because I've had customers, I've had competitors actually reach out to me with their products, and they'll say something like, "This is our phone agent." And yeah, sometimes it does sound a little bit better, but then it's much more expensive for them to run. And to be honest, most business owners just don't care if it sounds good enough. And even if it does sound like it's a robot, in some cases, that is not a problem. We've had people go with the cheaper models that sound worse because they had a use case where they need more minutes. So I was like, okay, well, we have some cheaper models that you can try. They won't be as smart and it may not sound as good, but they don't care. It's almost like it's good enough. The technology has reached a point to where it's good enough, and it replaces voicemail or an IVR phone system. It's just so much better experience. So you always have to balance that. We could always be exploring. I believe the latest model we have access to is GPT 5.6, or maybe it's 5.1. We could be using that for everything, but you have to balance the cost side, and do people really care, because the agents sound good enough at this point.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes from a consumer standpoint, I know it's AI, I treat it differently. But if I can if I think it's a human, but it really isn't, that's a little bit frustrating, I think, sometimes. But we're still in the empathy.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that is exactly why we tell every customer, just admit right up front that it's an AI assistant. No one's gonna. We've had some people who got confused and ask it if it's a human, because it does sound remarkably human, especially in that initial message. But we think it's best to be upfront and be like, hey, in fact, what we say in the dental office is, I'm the AI assistant, taking calls for the practice. I can help you schedule an appointment. You can ask me general questions, and I can text you something like that. And we find that being upfront while also telling them what its capabilities are is very helpful, because we have a lot of older patients, because it's older patients who often, have dental issues, especially with implants, because we do implants. And they don't know what this is. They don't know if it's an older phone system that they can't ask questions to. They have no idea. So telling them that up front, yes, this is AI, and yes, you can ask me any question and I can answer it. It's key.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I'm thinking of my mom. Right. So love her to pieces, but she would probably get very frustrated unless she knew up front if she was talking to a computer. So is there
Yeah, well,
anything? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say one other interesting, weird thing that no one talks about. These AI phone agents are actually more empathetic than most humans. And where that comes in important. So we had one instance where a patient unfortunately passed away. A lot of these patients are older. And one of their family members called in after hours, I think, it doesn't matter, but they called in to the agent to let us know that obviously they could not be coming to the appointment. And the AI handled it properly. It was like, oh my God. I don't think it said, oh my God, but it said, thank you. So sorry to hear that. That's so unfortunate, blah, blah. I heard that exact same exchange a few months later with one of the dental office employees. And you have to keep in mind, they're running room to room constantly. They are so busy. Dentistry is so difficult to do. People don't realize that. But they're also young. These are Gen Zs. They don't know how to use the phone. My wife's kids, one time I called him, he didn't even say hello. He didn't know. I don't know. It's like, it's different. They don't have a lot of phone experience. And so what this employee said, he just said, oh, okay. That's it. He just said, oh, okay. Nothing else. And I asked him afterwards. That's how I figured out what the person said to him. But it's interesting. It can be more effective than a human for certain use cases. Even when you need like emotional capability or whatever you call it, it's really interesting.
Yeah, that is an interesting story. And that was Timothy Bramlett, the founder of Zinng. And if people want to get a hold of you, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if they hear this and they are interested in AI receptionist, our big thing is customer service. We walk people through everything and we usually set up the agents for them. But you can obviously check out Zing.ai. That's Zing with two N's, Zing.ai. And then if you'd like to hear, I'm all over Instagram at this point. That's where my soon to be largest audience is. I'm also on TikTok, but I don't reply to comments and stuff there just because I can't handle two platforms, to be honest, and build a company at the same time. But if you on Instagram, most of my content is all about building products, at least the content wherever my face is in it, because that is the easiest thing for me to talk about, to be honest. And I don't have a lot of time now to create the normal marketing content that I would because we're growing so fast organically through word of mouth and ads. But if you'd like to hear about building products or AI, because I also do posts about AI, then definitely follow along on Instagram. My handle there is Timothy Bramlett. It's pretty simple. I keep it simple. But yeah, that's how people can find me.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And I appreciate you taking time out of your day. And once again, that was another episode of the Operating System Show. And we'll catch you again next time.